Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. In the co-captain's chair, one of our big stars from the Hudson Valley Squares, Mr. Nick Franco. What's going on, Nick? How are you today?
What's up? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk some Enslaved. So we've had a lot of people asking for a Ranking the Albums of Enslaved. It's taken us a while to bring it to you because, quite frankly, they got a lot of albums. And what I found in kind of reinvestigating this catalog, again, because that's when you're doing one of these ranking episodes, you got to kind of immerse yourself in the albums. Not only is there a lot of them, but there is not a weak album among them. And I'm going to have a seriously hard time. I had a seriously hard time putting this list together. And I could probably, if I decide to say, screw this list tomorrow and do it again, I would probably put things in a completely different order because every album is really great, really great. And it all depends on whether you kind of lean towards the early stuff, which is more traditional, more savage, right? Whereas by the middle of their career, they really started to do kind of the more progressive stuff, which is quite frankly where I came on board. So it all depends on kind of where you started listening to these guys. But even in saying that, I mean, I was listening to like the first like handful of albums last week, and I'm like, oh my God, each of these albums is just absolutely amazing. And it's like, but they're different amazing. So it's like, it's just impossible to put together. It's impossible. And Nick and I, before we went on the air, we were talking about how when we did a top 10 song show of Enslaved back, a year ago? We're close to it with Steve Keeler, and that was impossible too, because it's almost like you can't pick songs off of these albums because they're meant to be taken as a whole. And what I like to do when I do these ranking shows is I talk about why the album sits where it does and what are my favorite songs and why. And I'm like, every song is great on all of these albums. So I'm probably going to lean on you to talk more about the little history things about these albums and things like that. Because for me, it's just like the album is great. Here's 3 songs I love. Let's go on to the next, right? Because I just and let's just get the elephant out of the room. So every time I do one of these ranking shows, we get a number of people who ask, "Thanks for that, Pete. Where's the best place to start?" Normally, I say, "Well, start with my number 1, 2, or 3." Today, I'm going to say, you know what? Pick any of them and just dive in.
Yeah, they are one of those bands that, they began with that second wave of black metal in Norway with these, isolated, young, hungry. These guys were like, I think Ivar Bjornsson, who's their main composer and guitar player, was 13 when they started. And he, they lived in an isolated part of an isolated country. And this movement was sweeping the country of this furious, blasphemous, church-burning black metal, and they never they always leaned towards more of the mythology of their homeland, and they weren't ever into that fire and brimstone 666 stuff,
right?
But they still managed to sound just as savage as if they were. And a very interesting band because they've been active since 1991, and they're one of those few bands. They're very, very similar trajectory to Amorphous, where starting out with an extreme and traditional type sound, getting experimental, and then sort of blending both of those into a present day that is very, very successful. And so a unique band.
Absolutely. So we're looking at 15 albums here. So get yourself a drink, everybody. Relax, sit back, and you're in for the long haul here. So we're going to go through all 15 of them, and Nick is going to kick us off with his number 15.
All right. And right away, I know that my pick is going to not be conventional, but you'll see at the end of this, you'll see my pattern with Enslaved. So my least favorite Enslaved album, still a good album, is, believe it or not, is Isa. And I'm sure that's counter to what you're going to say. These albums were very critically acclaimed, and they are good, but it was very, very experimental. Very much elements of songwriting that were very considered, very deliberate, if that makes sense. A lot less of the spontaneity of that we were used to from them. Still very good, but not it's my number 15, Issa. Not the most.
Well, I'm going to surprise you here because it's my number 15 as well.
Oh, okay. I thought you loved this one, but
okay. So this was my starting point. All right. And I loved this when I first heard this, and I still love it. But when going back over all these albums, I said, you know what? I think I just like all their other albums a little bit better. It's really good. I mean, you got the title track is amazing. Ascension is amazing. And I think there's more of a kind of straightforward metal approach to this album that really works.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of exploration going on here. Return to, and I'm going to mispronounce it, Yggdrasil. How do you say that?
That's exactly it.
Yggdrasil, okay. Yep. Is the real kind of crushing track on here. I will say that if you've never listened to Enslaved and you're looking for a place to kind of start, this is a good place to start, because it's still black metal, but it's very progressive and it's a little more straightforward. I kind of call this their kind of like black and roll album a little bit. It's very accessible. Yeah. And like I said, I dig it a lot. And if we would have had this conversation 10 years ago, it would have ranked a hell of a lot higher. But I think after all these years, I mean, we're looking at 16 years since this came out. I mean, these guys have put out a ton of great albums. And as good as this is, and again, it's sitting at number 15 for both of us, do not take it as if this is a bad album, because it is not. It's very, very good.
Right. And yeah, people always remember that you're comparing a discography against itself.
Yeah.
And not in the wider world. I mean, it's a damn good album. 2004 was one of the stronger albums.
Yeah.
Came out. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
All right. Back to you.
And next for me, in keeping with my sort of lukewarm approach to this era of their career, believe it or not, I have Axioma Ethica Odini, which I think, and thinking back to our top 10 songs, I remember you and Mr. Steve Keeler had a couple songs from this album. Again, not a bad album. It just didn't have the songs that grabbed me. I love the opening. I love Ethica Odini. That song is incredible. The arrangement with the clean vocals, they were killing it with that. And the song The Beacon, I love from it. But the other songs are good, but they don't blow my hair back. Not that I have any, but you know what I mean?
I totally get you. Well, we'll talk about that in a little while. So obviously, you know, that's coming up pretty high for me. All right. So here's where it gets really difficult for me. So my number 14, I'm going to go with 2000's Mardrum, right? Which also called Beyond the Within. This is they did a couple albums in a row that are just absolutely brutal albums. You know, this and Bloodhem, which came out, was it right before it? Yeah, shortly before.
Yes, right before
it. Recorded at Abyss Studios, which of course is Peter Togtren's studios. It's got that 10-minute opener, Storm and Tid. I hate trying to pronounce some of these Norwegian titles, but great song. You got those violent vocals from Mr. Grutel. Little bit of death metal element going on in some of these songs. I'm finding this album and the album before. Does that have anything to do with Peter Togtren's influence? I don't know. Who the hell knows? But and you got a couple of doomy things on here. You got the Ormgard Part 1 and 2, which is just absolutely kick-ass. This is just like a relentless album. There's really not much atmospheric stuff on here. And the riffs are big and technical. I think, Enslaved went through this little period where they were doing that almost kind of like Immortal, that really big, monstrous riffing, technical riffing, so to speak. And that's kind of, for me, like the bridge between the early stuff, which we'll talk about, and this much more experimental phase. They went through this like absolutely punishing period right in the middle, which damn good. But again, it's like all depends on kind of when you came in, what you prefer. But a kick-ass album, really kick-ass. And again, this is all Norwegian vocals and lyrics and stuff before they started to do everything in English.
Right. They used to say they would only perform in Norwegian, but I think once their popularity branched out, I think they got away from that.
Yep.
Very good. All right. So my next one would be Monumention, which Monumention was most certainly their strangest album. and a good album, but it featured some like downright psychedelic moments. It's the only album though of theirs where I would say there are songs in it that I just plain don't enjoy. And those are the Sleep, Floating Diversity, and then that weird outro. This is a band that can, loves Pink Floyd and Rush, and some very surprising, not that this album sounds like Rush, it doesn't, but there's definitely that Pink Floyd element going on, and I appreciated it. I mean, it wasn't well received at the time. And that was the tour that I saw them play in front of 14 people at Obsessions in Randolph, New Jersey. And it was like hardly anybody there, But they had a completely different lineup when they made this album. They had Roy Kronheim on guitar and Dirge Rep. That was his nickname, Dirge Rep, on drums. And Dirge Rep, this big hulking dark-haired Norwegian guy, great drummer. But they were having a lot of internal problems. And Monumention was like sort of the last straw, where I think they were on the cusp of doing something. You could tell they wanted to branch out from the brutal, and they were starting to do that, like with Mardrum. And this one was the most psychedelic before they tore it down and started over, which we will obviously get to. Your turn.
Good album. Good album. I'm going to go on my number 13 with Blood Hymn.
Nice.
1998. Again, another Peter Tockman production at Abyss Studios. Another really fast, brutal album. I jotted down some notes here about the riffs, like I mentioned with the previous one, big kind of Immortal style and intense riffing on this album. Less prog elements on this album, I think. Vertical Gods, killer crushing tune. A lot of guitar solos on this album. You got a little bit of clean vocal chanting too, which is a little weird on this album, I think. Right?
I love it.
Yeah, it's really busy. You listen to it, you're like, oh, that's kind of different, right?
Yeah.
A lot of crazy blast beats on this album. It's just like fast and furious, start to finish. A lot of really great tracks in here. I'm not even going to try and pronounce them because, again, this is still doing all the Norwegian song titles and things. But really cool album. Really cool album. And if you're looking for the most brutal Enslaved albums, easily these two for me. Easily those two. Back to you.
All right. So next for me is Vertebrae. Again, that mid period, and there is some good stuff on here, but it isn't like weird that you could listen to an album, you could appreciate it, but it doesn't have that effect on your heart. This one, out of all the albums of Enslaved, obviously in my ranking, it's a little bit higher. Out of the ones that didn't quite blow me off my seat, this one does more than the ones before it, but it doesn't, Clouds to the Coast, New Dawn, and The Watcher are my strong tracks on this album, and they're really good. And you could see they were starting to really get comfortable with this lineup. Was a solid lineup that they had for many years, and I'll talk more about that lineup in a minute. But Vertebrae comes in next for me.
Okay. All right. I think my next choice is not going to make Nick very happy, but I'm going to go with their debut at number 12, which is called Vikingliger Veldi, right? How do you say that?
Vikingliger Veldi.
Vikingliger Veldi. All right. I'm terrible on my pronunciations here. Yeah. So again, like we talked about earlier, they're like teenagers here, right? If you look at the picture of them, I mean, what were they, like 16, 15, something like that?
Yeah, pretty damn near. Yeah.
I mean, you can tell so this is 1994, so they actually released this on Death Like Silence Productions, which was, of course, Euronymous' label. Euronymous, the late member of Mayhem. And this was released, I think, shortly after his murder, so I don't even think he was alive to see this get released. Really raw album, but man, really, really progressive and kind of ahead of its time almost, because at the time, around this time, you had also Emperor was out, you had Mayhem, Immortal were just getting started as well around the same time. But man, some of the stuff that's going on in this album, a lot of prog elements, really long songs, You get, Lefandi Lil Undir Hamri, or however the hell you say it. Big 11-minute epic track, just absolutely awesome. You get Vetranat, whatever, however the hell you say it, is got some insane blast beats from Mr. Trim. Great drummer. Grutal is just sounding like evil as all hell on this album. Midgards Eldar, big steamrolling track, a lot of atmosphere, just a lot of great stuff on here. And I think considering how young the band was at the time, this is very mature sounding stuff. They're very classy, as kind of brutal and evil as the album sounds. It's just, it sounds, what am I trying to say? Considering how young they were, it sounds so mature, and the experience level really comes through. And it's almost like you listen to this, even if you know the whole Enslaved story very well, you listen to this and you're like, okay, I can totally see where everything they did afterwards got its start here. It's almost like they knew where they were going to go 20, 30 years later, right?
Absolutely. It's well said. And I think people, a lot of people, they kind of shy away from black metal. I think the like anything else, that when you don't know about something, the most extreme aspects of it are what sticks with you. But people forget how just talented, just how unbelievably talented and innovative these kids were.
Yep.
And it was only a few bands, really. I mean, there were a lot of them, but compared to the whole backdrop of heavy metal, there wasn't a lot of people doing what these guys were doing.
Yeah, musically, it's pretty outstanding stuff. I think most folks who really don't listen to black metal or shy away from it, it's because of the vocals. But I think a lot of people would be surprised at just how intricate a lot of these arrangements are on a lot of these albums.
Definitely. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Speaking of intricate, next for me is Roon. And Roon could be the first song, Entropa, if you remember, I included it in my top 10. That goddamn song is just so good. That riff central to that song, holy shit, is amazing. Just amazing. And I think Roon is a very consistent and a very strong album. And I remember when it came out, people, this band has won, they're called like Spelman Prisen. It's like basically Norwegian Grammys. And it's funny, you can look up footage of them like accepting the Grammy, and it's like a black tie event, and they come up and accept the Grammy, and it's wild. They deserved it. 2006, Roon is just a very strong album overall, and they had that Cato Beckevald on drums, Icedale on guitar, Herbrand Larson keyboards and clean vocals. That was a solid, consistent lineup for them.
Yeah. And
this is one of the best fruits of that lineup. Roon, very strong.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I saw them on that tour for the first time, if it was that or the next album. I don't remember. I saw them with Opeth for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it was at God, I'm trying to remember what venue in New York City it was. It was at the Hammerstein, but it was upstairs. It was
okay.
Small room. I think it was them and Opeth, and they were great. And then I saw them also at another venue, in fact, with you. I don't even remember where that was. Was it the Gramercy?
Probably. They play the Gramercy a lot.
Yeah, and they were amazing. It was one of those weird bills, like Paul Bearer opened up.
Oh, yeah.
And I like Paul Bearer, but that's not a good match, right?
No, yeah. One thing that drove me nuts about Enslaved was that I was never very happy with the songs they played live during this middle period, because like a lot of those songs, they're good to throw on headphones and like go for a walk in the woods, but they just didn't translate to a lot of energy live. But
you know what it is? I think this is a band, not to use the Opeth connection again, but they're a band that needs to go out and do a 2.5, 3 hour show, so they can kind of do a lot of the different eras. And maybe do like a half hour, 45 minutes of some of the more spacey proggy stuff, do like a set of all the old blazing stuff, and then mix it, because it's like, I think like an hour set of Enslaved, you're not going to get, probably like you said, you're not going to get enough of what you really like. And especially later today, they're going to play stuff from the more recent albums, which have been pretty popular, right? But I think like an evening with Enslaved, 3 hours, like kind of like what Dream Theater does, that would be pretty cool.
They did that once. They did that in New York City with themselves, where they did like a set of all the old stuff, and then they did a set of it. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I missed that. Oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, my number 11, their second album, Frost, from 1994. Great album. And might as well show the back. There's the guys there. This album is like cold as shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like you got that song Loke, right, which is icy and maniacal. You got Fenris, a lot of mid-pace riffing, but which we would see a lot of in years to come from them. I think Trim's drumming is uncanny on this album. Yeah, just amazing. You got Ivar Bjornsson, Grudel. I mean, this is a really good trio right here, and it's amazing, like this big wall of sound that these three guys create on this album. Svarte Vidder,
yeah,
like Brutal. What a great song that is, right? But still pretty melodic, right? Still pretty melodic. You got Yggdrasil, which is creepy as all hell. Got the big doomy riffs, clean vocals. Jotun Blood, another great song, absolutely savage. Blast beats and synths and raging riffs and shrieking vocals. I mean, there's just some classic stuff on there. Again, could rank higher. There's probably, if for any like long time Enslaved fans who are watching this, like, oh, Pardo is ranking all the old stuff really low. I love this stuff. It's just that I came into the band on a lot of the newer stuff, early 2000s and on, and that's the stuff that that latched me onto this band. So I'm going to lean to that a little bit, but I love this old stuff. I do.
Yeah.
That's why this was really hard, because we talk about this a month from now and I could just totally switch all this up again. So it's tough.
Well, that album and a lot of the ones from Norway from that era were recorded in a place called Greighollen Studio in Bergen, Norway. And one of the things that the guy who produced these albums, whose name was called Pitten, that was his name. He created this, like, with the shrieking vocals and the drums and all those things. He added this like echoing quality to it. I think from the fact that they recorded in a very large room, and that I don't think people realized at the time like how iconic that production.
There's a lot of reverb on these albums. Yeah,
reverb. That's the word. Yep.
Yeah. And these are all, most of these older ones were on Osmos Productions, which is a notorious 90s black metal label that does so much of these classic albums that these bands we referenced were on that label.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, they, So that brings me to, what number are we on? 10?
10.
So that is where I come in with Blue Hymn, the one that you mentioned before. And you said it, man. Just absolute fucking crushing album. But I love the arrangements of clean vocals that they had on here. Some like the Dinga Slacht, and which they give the English versions too. They gave the English lyrics in here, which is good. But absolutely Bathory on cocaine. It's just like complete. But the songwriting, the skills were there, like the elements of what they did today were there. So for newer people who aren't as familiar, if you throw on Blood Hymn, you're not going to just be blown backwards and like there's like a wall of sound. There's a lot of intricacies to the songwriting. So yeah, Blue Hymn sits like almost in the middle for me. I loved it when it came out, and I actually like it more now, I think, than I did in 98 when it came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, number 10 for me is Eld from 1997. I love this album cover. How cool does he look? Cool. How cool does he look there, right?
Very cool.
Even on the back,
Yeah.
Really progressive album from them.
Yeah.
I talked a little before about some of the old albums. You can kind of hear the seeds of what would become later on. And I think probably more so on this album, we would really start to hear, again, they would do those two really brutal albums after this, but then they would come right back to the proggy stuff, and they haven't looked back since then. A lot of great technical drumming on this album. Of course, you got Harold Helgeson, right? Is that his name? Who plays drums on this album. A lot of keyboards on this album. You got the raging screams mixed with the clean vocals. Glent, Eld, Kvasir's Blood. It's got some doom elements on it. You know, a lot of maniacal black metal shrieking going on here, and you know, the fast-paced stuff with the blast beats and everything like that. You've got the wonderful 16-minute epic 793 Slaget om Lindisfarne. Did I say that right?
You did.
I'm just winging it here, man. I don't know.
No, that's good. That's very good.
But that's like the big centerpiece of this album. And that's a really, really cool proggy epic. This is a really fun album, and it's a really cool album. Like I said, if you're someone who appreciates like heavy prog rock or prog metal, but you're kind of like on the fence about the extreme vocals, man, give some of these albums a chance, because this band has a lot to offer. You know, lyrically too, we're not really talking a lot about lyrics here, but man, the lyrics are really interesting. This is not satanic lyric stuff by any means. A lot of Viking mythology and all that kind of stuff. It's very, you know, steeped in Norwegian traditions and what have you, and mythology. But man, musically, really, really intricate stuff. There's no other black metal band on the face of the earth that plays stuff like this.
Absolutely. Such an otherness, you know, that was just fantastic. So my number 9, Nueve, Ritir. When Ritir came out, it's funny, like I got it, I listened to it. It took me a little bit. It was a bit of a grower. And I went back, you know, when we were doing our list, you know, for top songs, and I realized, like, my goodness, what a fantastic album. There's not a weak moment on this album. It's just, and it's heavy, and it's got all the things you love about a prog style band. That's, you know, that look at that, cool. That is such a cool, the artwork in this band, it just gets better and better.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Ritir, and again, it's one of those, like, yeah, you sit down, you listen to the whole thing, and you just you want to listen to the whole thing. It's a long album too, but it flies by. And I know you like some songs from that too.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Yeah,
I think all of these albums need to be listened to as albums, and I can't stress that enough. That's why we had such a hard time doing a top 10 song show, because this is an album band. You're meant to listen to these from start to finish. This is not a let's take a greatest hits and put a compilation together, or let's put them on shuffle. I could never listen to this band on shuffle, because every album has kind of a different feel. The songs, the tracks all belong together. They're meant to be listened to in succession, and can't stress it enough.
Yeah, Ritir. Absolutely.
All right, number 9, Monumention from 2000.
Yes. It's good you put it up that high. I'm glad you did.
Well, I like it because it's so weird. This is like the weirdest album in their catalog, without a doubt. It's dark. It's really atmospheric. There's a lot of bottom end in this album. You know, in re-listening to this recently, I was like, holy shit. Like, there's a lot of bass in this album, and just like really fat drumming. I mean, this has definitely a different sound than any of the other albums, in a good way though. And this is their first with English lyrics, I believe. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Convoys to Nothingness.
So cool.
Big, scary, heavy piece with like a huge monolithic destructo riff. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. It's so damn heavy. You got the Voices, okay, which is also another great tune. Big beefy bass. There's so much bass to this album. You got cool keyboards. You got the vocals going from the deep growls to the clean, back to the evil raspy stuff. I mean, it's just like all over the place. Vision, Sphere of the Elements, Monument Part 2. I mean, you know, it's great stuff on here. Hollow Inside, the Cromlech Gate.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few of the amazing songs on this killer album. Again, probably the most different album in their catalog. And, you know, 2001. So is this technically the bridge to everything that came after it? It's almost like it is. Because you had the early stuff we talked about. You had the 2 really brutal, fast and heavy albums. Then this. And then, you know, I don't know. Well, actually, there's Below the Lights too, which we're going to get to.
Right. Yeah, Monumention. I mean, I think the lineup problems that were going on were more to do with the fact that there were some behavioral issues with that guitar player, Mr. Kronheim there. And I don't know so much if it was artistic differences, but you could feel Enslaved was really pushing their boundaries with that one. And yeah, I agree. It has a good album. Which brings us to my next one, which is Below the Lights. And that was 2003. And this was stripped down. You know, they hadn't put their lineup together yet that they were going to go into the future with. And this one really hit because the critics didn't like Monumention. It didn't get good reviews, and I was disappointed in that because I thought it was, like we were saying, it was a very good album. But with Below the Lights, they got that guy Arve Istal, who they call Icedale, and he's their guitar player who live never wears a shirt.
Yep.
And he's very talented. He's just
he's
quiet, right? He just goes about his business. And they brought him in, and the two of them, Grutel and Ivar, whose band it is, I'm pretty certain composed most of it. And this was Enslaved saying, we still have the Viking, like the Norse mythology roots, but you can't stop us now. We're just going to do whatever. And it features the song Havenless, which, my Lord, is one of the coolest. It has that Viking chant going on, that, real choir type thing chant, and then it goes in with the music. And I mean, that song alone is just a monument of a song.
Yeah. It's my number 8 as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I dig this album. And this is their last Osmos record. Okay. Right. Before they move on to also, I think, released on the End Records, I think, here in the States. Herbron Larson, is this the first album he appears on, I believe?
On Below the Lights?
Yeah, I could have sworn this was the first album he's on.
He probably does, because they must have enlisted guest musicians. There's a lot here.
Yeah,
I don't know if this was the first time he was in it, but he might have been.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, whether he was or wasn't, an important member of the band as well going forward. But more importantly, a lot of textures on this album. As Fire Swept Clean the Earth. Did I say that right? As Fire Swept Clean the Earth is an awesome song. Brooding, menacing track. The Dead Stare is just fast and furious. You got mixes of prog and folk on in The Crossing. You mentioned Havenless, awesome. A Darker Place, awesome. Just a really good album. It sounds great too. And again, Monumention in this, I think Monumention in this album, you really saw the direction they were immediately going in, which they totally did with Issa and all the albums after that. But this is really good stuff. Again, very, very progressive as well.
Yeah, and mysterious. I love that about them, and that album is super mysterious.
Yeah,
as that album, definitely. Which brings us to the like we said, the first jaunt into the unknown with Mardrome. I have it pretty high up in mine. This was my first Enslaved album.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got into them with, and we saw them perform. My friends and I saw them perform at the March Metal Meltdown in New Jersey, and they were still wearing all the Viking shit on stage. It was so cool, and man, that was wild to see them back then. But yeah, this that hard to. Yeah, I'll help you out. You were trying to say the song title. It's in English. It's Larger Than Time, Heavier Than Night. We'll say that because it's they offered both translations.
I should have just taken the easy route, but I'm up for a challenge all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to try. But the way that starts out, really, like, you could tell they were influenced by Pink Floyd while playing this brutal death metal style black metal. So the other psychedelic one was Entrance Escape, and then Ormgard and freaking Det Ende Legeriket. Just, they were not messing around, man. This is such a good album, and it sounds just as good now as it did back then.
Yeah, it's so heavy. It's so punishing, right?
Yep.
Unrelenting.
All
right, number 7. How about the little Roon from 2006? Really good album. Again, this kind of takes the Issa framework one step further. Kind of accessible, yet it's still brutal and heavy. You mentioned Entropa. What a great song.
That
I
riff.
hear a lot of Rush influence on that song.
Yeah.
A lot of influence of Rush. Pat's Veneer, I hear the Pink Floyd influence. Like for me, you can clearly hear that these guys love their early Rush, Pink Floyd, and early Genesis. I hear a lot of those influences in their music. Keyboards here, clean vocals, big symphonic swells, still really heavy though. Fusion of Sense and Earth. It's got Mellotron in it. I mean, it doesn't get much cooler than that. A lot of good riffs, Tides of Chaos, bulldozing, right? Appy Vat, lots of groove to go along with the traditional black metal stuff. I don't know. I dig this album a lot. I listened to this a ton when it came out. A ton. Still dig.
Very, very cool. Well, next for me is that I have the vinyl. I finally have a vinyl here. Viking League Verveldi comes next for me, and you said it, man. It absolutely presaged where they were going to go, and to be that young and to be able to write a coherent song that's like 15 minutes long wasn't something that many kids could do. And my favorite song on it is Midgards Eldar, which is just such a cool, throw it on your headphones and take a walk in the snow kind of, Bathory inspired, but quite their own thing. So
good stuff.
Yeah, I'll put that right up there, high up in the discography.
Yeah, I had a feeling you would.
Yeah,
and I can't argue it because it's really good. Yeah. It's not some kind of naive first album by a bunch of teenagers. It's actually it's pretty complex and pretty mature sounding, I think.
Yep, and it rips at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So my number 6, it's very hard when you're looking at a long discography like this that's so strong. And then, right before you do a show like this, they put out a new album and you dig the new album, but you're like, well, where the hell does it fit on this list of all these albums that I've been listening to for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years. Right. But I will say Utgard, their latest from this year, is really strong. Really strong. And where it will sit in this discography, maybe a year from now, who knows? For right now, I'm putting it at number 6 because I'm really enjoying it quite a bit. It's not really doing a lot different than what they've been doing. It's really continuing on with this kind of groundbreaking style they've been doing. Lots of keyboard soundscapes, mixing up with the punishing but complex guitar passages. Fires in the Dark, Sequence is a great song. Orjuton, I don't know how he says his thing.
Orjuton,
whatever. Okay, I tried. I do my best, right? Really good album, very strong. This is now the second album with the new keyboard player. This is the third album.
Second one with Håkan Vinje.
Yeah. So, again, with this band, this happens whenever you follow a band that had like a really classic lineup and then someone leaves. So now, they got the new keyboard player in an album ago. He's got a different clean vocal style. So you got to get used to that because the other guy had this really, really melodic style. His is it's melodic, but it's a little different. He's settled in very nicely here. And this is quite good. Quite good.
Yeah. They've, they had a stable lineup from just after, 2004. They had a stable lineup right up until and including my next album, which I don't know what the hell I did with the CD, but I can't find it. And I gotta go to Rock Fantasy and fix that. But it's In Times is my next one. Now we're in the top 5 now, right?
This is number 5. Yes.
Yeah. So this is big, obviously Process of Elimination. If you're familiar with Enslaved's discography, that I've left I've left out a lot that are new. And In Times, I got to say that was where I realized that Enslaved was going to start to become not just a band I really liked and loved their old stuff, but wow, I mean, that goddamn thing blew me the fuck away when it came out in 2015. All that weird shit that they did in the middle 2000s where they did all this experimental stuff we're talking about, I really feel that Enslaved needed to re-inject some visceral emotion back into their songs, some no nonsense, going for it. And when you listen to Building with Fire, the title track, 1,000 Years of Rain, which is a goddamn masterpiece, these guys, they all of a sudden, I was like, holy shit, reinvigorated. It did for me what your favorite Amorphous album did for you.
Oh, Eclipse. Yeah.
Eclipse. And even though you had the different, it was different circumstances, but for me in times it was like made me sit up and go, these guys can make an album that is every bit as good as any of their classics. So I'm a huge fan of In Times, and I put it right at my top 5.
More on that in a little bit.
Yep.
All right, my number 5, I'm going to go with 2017's E, whatever.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We're getting to the point, kind of like you just said, we're getting to the point in this discography which any of these albums for me could be their best.
Yeah.
Love them all. They're just so good. This one's no exception. Not a lot of songs on here. 6 basically, right? We got 6 songs on here. They're all epic pieces. Axis of the World, amazing. Sacred Horse, The River's Mouth, Hindsight. I mean, any one of them on here is just as a classic. It's progressive. It's heavy. Got clean vocals, growling vocals, lots of keyboards, complex guitar riffs and solos and things. I mean, these guys, they don't shy away from playing guitar solos, which is kind of cool, right? Yeah, great stuff, and could rank higher. Any of these top 5 could move around in this ranking at all. I love them all. So I don't, and it's gonna sound kind of predictable going forward because I really have the same thing to say about all of them. They're all that good, right? And all the songs are great.
Yeah, totally. Which brings me to Utgard.
There you go.
And I didn't want to have some sort of recency bias either. So I've been listening a lot to this album just to make sure that I'm not, that it's like the newest, you know what I mean? Like, and then after, like you said, after a couple of years, I truly believe that in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, I will be very comfortable with this album in the top 5. Now we're at the point where it's like it's ridiculous. Like, yeah, they got a new drummer, Ivar Sandoy, I don't know if that's how you say it, but he helps their production, I think, now, and he sat in to do the drums and some of the clean vocals. And the clean vocals were different on Guard, but yeah, man, Fires in the Dark reminds me of what do you call it? Reminds me of Havenless, the way it starts. And yeah, just not a damn weak moment on it. We're mixing that psychedelic sort of, Floydian kind of style with the black metal and the Viking elements. And they're so good at it. It's almost like effortless for them now. I mean, this is 3 magically good albums in a row. No, I'm sorry. 1, 2. Yeah, 3. For me, in a row, bing, bing, bing. Holy shit. And then, that's not easy to do.
And you could say they've done 10 albums like that in a row or more, actually,
Sure. Just for me, like, and I'm liking Retier more and more as it goes on, as time goes on. But this last 3 albums they did, Jesus Christ, like Enslaved has climbed up into my probably top 5 bands of all time because of those last 3 albums. Like, fucking amazing.
Yep. All right, number 4, Vertebrae from 2008. And I love that kind of weird album cover. It's
such a strange album cover. So good.
It's so good. Again, prog meets black metal once again. Clouds is a great song. And again, for all you Mellotron lovers, you got this cool, creepy Mellotron mixing up with the brutal black metal. I mean, it doesn't get more odd yet great like as that. Herbrand Larsson's clean vocals are amazing on this album. He's such a great singer. And it's just, you pair him up against Grudel's absolutely brutal vocals, and it's just like, and you get it through almost every song, which is great. It's kind of like this, roller coaster ride that they take you on. New Dawn just is absolutely killer, totally brutal. You get the kind of best of both worlds here. You get the brutal black metal, the really kind of intricate prog and psychedelia. Man, title track, Reflection, The Watcher. I mean, it's all really good. All really good. Classic stuff. Love this album.
Oh yeah, that was another very critically acclaimed one as well.
Yeah.
So top 3. I am very, very happily going with, and I lied before. I said that Blue Hymn was my first. No, I said that Marjoram was my first Enslaved album. I lied. I'm a liar. It was Eld.
There you go.
Yeah, and god damn. It's that one you said, this Battle of Lindisfarne, the 16-minute epic, Alpha Blood and Kvasir's Blood, right there probably. And one of the things about Kvasir's Blood is you saw a little bit of like that they were going to use clean vocals, because there's I guess it's the chorus in the song, and I think it's Grudel at the time, because that's all they had to do. That's the only guy that they had to do vocals. I think it's just him, and he has this really cool like overarching, like you hear the clean vocal sort of in the background of all the cacophony of that they were making. And man, does that work, because it sets a mood. It sets an atmosphere of like mystical Norse mythology shit that just was amazing, you know, and it holds up, you know, it really holds up over time. It's just a goddamn good album.
It is good. It is good. As is everything we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if I've ever done on this channel, on the ranking shows, if I've ever talked about a discography that is as good as this, like from a purely successful standpoint of each and every album. Because, you know, I mean, most bands, they've got a stinker or two, you know, most bands. There's not that here at all. I mean, the quality throughout, you know, again, if you don't like this type of music, whatever. But I think if you do, there's not many discographies that are as good as this from start to finish. There really isn't. Where are we? Number 3, Ready Theater, 2012. One of their longer albums. This is a big, long, epic album. Over an hour, a lot of music on here, a lot of great stuff. Again, long tracks. Not like there's a ton of tracks on here, but they make them count. Thoughts Like Hammers, I should say. Title track, Material, really good stuff. Veil Burner, Storm of the Memories. A lot of textures on here. It's very melodic, very adventurous album. This is definitely one of their proggier albums, I think. But it's still really, really heavy. Just great stuff. And I mean, that cover, come on. How cool is that?
So cool. Yeah, very creative. And the last song, Forsaken, at 11 minutes and change. What a song. What a way to close an album out. Excellent.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So, in my top 2, I got something very new and something very old.
Check your audio. Check your audio. Your voice sounds all sorts of weird.
Oh, does it? Oh boy, I don't know. How's that now? I tried to figure some things out. Any better?
Sounds the same. Sounds like you're in a tunnel.
I don't know. Now, he is my second favorite.
Cool.
Yeah. How's it now?
It still sounds the same, but we'll get through it. That's okay.
Sorry. Yeah, totally. He is. When I heard this, I knew that Enslaved was on another level, just another level. Storm Sun takes you places, and then River's Mouth and Sacred Horse, Axis of the Worlds. That 4 starting songs. Fantastic. Yeah. Jesus. Great clean vocals. Great clean vocals.
Yeah, it's a testament to these guys that, like, you know, here we are later in their career and they're releasing some of the best albums of their career. So pretty crazy. All right. I'm going to go to 2010, Axioma Ethica Odini. Again, another really cool album cover there. Really dig that. Title track is brutal. Great. You got the Beacon, which is kind of catchy for Enslaved anyway. You got the moody and progressive Night Shift. Lightning is really kind of symphonic and kind of Pink Floydian. Just an absolutely terrific album. Again, not a lot of songs, everything very kind of lengthy and epic. Got the brooding, you got the brutal, you got the proggy, you got the catchy. It's a little bit of everything. And it's just another example of a band that's just doing everything so well here late in their career. So for today, it's my number 2.
Nice. And now my number 1.
And now his voice sounds good. All right, there you go.
Oh, no, I don't know what I did. Okay. Without a doubt, Frost. Frost. This album, I thought, you know, I realized it only not that long ago that it would have to be my favorite Enslaved album. Look at them; they're not messing around there.
No, they're not.
Yeah, one of the guys didn't bring his helmet, but anyway, yeah, I think you. I mean, you touched on it before. Just the weird, the very unique production of Greg Holland with the echoing, shrieking vocal, with the drums just echoing, just reverbing out. You had some super creative, I'm not going to call them attempts because they succeeded, but they weren't just writing straight up storming black metal songs. They had them like Loki and Jotunblood, but the twists and turns and different timing and melodies in like Fenris and Svarta Vida and Gylfaginning. Jesus Christ, to write something when they're that young and to have it sound just as freaking amazing now is remarkable. It's remarkable. There's not a lot of bands in any genre that, you're talking, I know it's a different style, but you're talking Iron Maiden level. You're talking like their first album was just blew you away and grabbed you by the throat and didn't let go. It's magic. And Frost has a ton of that old weird Norse mystical freaking snow-covered mountain, not quite evil, but not quite, good. Just an absolutely honest and fucking brutal record.
That's I think I said it earlier. I think out of all their albums, it's definitely their coldest sounding album. All right. That's a thing, we often, when we're explaining some of these Norwegian black metal albums, it's like the ones that are, true Norwegian black metal have this cold, frosty, chilling atmosphere going through them, whether it's the way the guitars sound or the drums sound or the keyboards they use. There's just this, you close your eyes and you feel you were sitting on a mountaintop with like all these trees that have no leaves on them. There's snow on the ground. The wind is howling. There's a storm coming. It's fucking cold. And that's the way you feel when you listen to that album.
Without a doubt. That's a great way to put it. It is an icy. This album could keep your beer cold.
Yes. And there's a feeling of dread because you're on that mountaintop in the cold all by yourself.
Yeah.
But who is going to come save me and get me out of here? Nobody. You're stuck. That's the way it is.
And they recently played it all a couple of years ago. They played the whole album.
Oh, really?
At Decibel Metal Fest, in Philly and in Philadelphia. And to hear it played live with the modern instruments, and it's oh my God, it's even better. I mean, this has its own unique atmosphere and it's special and it should be enjoyed that way. But it is interesting to hear the guys play it at this stage of their career, play the shit out of
it. Yeah, exactly. That must have been pretty cool. So my number one, no surprise if you've been kind of keeping track, is In Times from 2015. I love this album. Absolutely love this album. To me, this is Enslaved's Blackwater Park by Opeth. It's big, it's heavy, it's progressive. Man, you got the demonic Thuryazaz dreaming, or however the hell they say that. Building with Fire, killer. One of my favorite songs by them. Oh, it's amazing. 1,000 Years of Rain, killer. You got the title track. Again, not a lot of songs on here. It's all really long and epic. I just love it. I love the textures on here. The guitars are larger than life. The keyboards are just absolutely perfect. Get the clean vocals, the demonic, raging black metal vocals. You got everything. This is like a smorgasbord, a feast for everything you like about heavy metal music, and it's gorgeous at times. There's passages on here that are just like, oh man, listen to that. That is so majestic, and then they hit you back with the violence, and it's best of both worlds. Easily my favorite Enslaved album, amongst a lot of favorites here. So
yeah, and it was the final one with that lineup that stayed together for so long, and I remember being worried. I think the first shoe to fall was Herbrand leaving, the keyboardist and the clean vocalist, and I worried, And
I did too, because he's a really good singer,
Oh.
Yeah,
great.
That's like Borknagar losing ICS Vortex.
Oh God, right? I know.
Kind of similar because they both have those just gorgeous, clean, melodic vocals, and it's like, oh man. But you know what? They got another guy, and they're doing it. It's fine.
Yeah, that kid he's got a good, great singing voice.
Yeah, exactly. It's different, but it's still really good. So there you have it, everybody. So an hour's worth of Enslaved, ranking the albums, all 15 of them. So if you are a fan, let's see your ranking in the comments below. If you have never listened to this band before, here is your assignment. Go here on YouTube or wherever it is, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to your new music. Go check out a couple of these albums that Nick and I have talked about. See what you think. Come back and report in, right? Whether you like it or not, curious to see what you guys think, because this is a really good band. This is a really good band. And like I said earlier, if you are on the fence with black metal, or maybe you've never listened to black metal before, but you like really intricate progressive music with thoughtful lyrics and a lot of really cool instrumentation, give these guys a try. All right. Just clean vocals. You got the extreme vocals, I'll call them. A lot of keyboards, a lot of great guitar riffs. Some of these albums are brutally heavy. Some are really proggy. Some are a mix of both, obviously, but really good stuff. Really good stuff. So I want to thank Mr. Franco for helping me out on this tough assignment. This was one of the tougher ones here, but fun to talk about because this is a really good band to talk about that I dig a lot. So thanks to Nick. Nick and I are going to do some more black metal themed bands in the future. So stay tuned for that. And of course, you can see Nick every Monday night with the Hudson Valley Squares. And we'll be seeing him in a couple days, just under a week from now. So thanks to Nick Franco. I am Pete Pardo. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn time.
That's right. Everybody's getting there. We got everybody in the program now. So.
I love
that. So thanks, everybody. Stay tuned for more programming on the channel, including tomorrow night. One-on-one with Rob Halford. You do not want to miss it. So we'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.